Meta AI is the personal AI to help you with whatever you need. Plus, it meets you where you are. Not only is Meta AI now an app, but it's also on the apps you already know and love: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. Plus the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's easy to access wherever you are. So whether you're talking or texting, Meta AI is convenient to use throughout your day. Experience our newest AI that's tailored to you by downloading the Meta AI app. Try the Meta AI app today on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
This podcast is brought to you by TeamTrade, a digital solution that helps you hire, optimize, and retain employees. Using psychometric assessments to identify more than 100 professional mindset traits, it gives instant reports you can use to build high-performing teams. Get 2 free profiles today, no commitment, no credit card required, at teamtrait.com. TeamTrait.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
You know, we've never talked about supply chains on this show, Lee, and honestly, it is such a critical part of both small business, our guest says, and, the big, huge, massive businesses. It can really make your job miserable when it's not going well.
Yeah, it could also be then, for the everyday person or whatever, it's the reason why your Amazon order sometimes doesn't show up when it's supposed to show up. Things get caught up in customs, whatever. There, of course, we've had experience with that back in COVID with the supply chain back there. So things are a little different now, thankfully, but still, supply chain is a hot topic.
Yeah, and especially because the show is Managed Smarter. If you're a manager at some point, if it isn't going well, it probably will come into your orbit in some form or fashion. So welcome to Managed Smarter, everyone. My name is Audrey Strong. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications at Sales Fuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Fuel.
I almost forgot my job title there for a second. What's wrong with me?
Communications, huh? Yeah.
We're so lucky to have David Carroll with us. He's an author, consultant, visionary, and speaker. He's working closely with a company out of my hometown of Chicago, actually a suburb of Naperville, called Reveal USA, that specializes in transforming supply chains. His book is called, I love the title, The Only All-in-One Way to Fix Your Supply Chain. For over a decade and a half, David has been helping companies fix their supply chains, working with them to adopt what he calls an unstoppable force. The force is a way of transforming supply chains from being broken and silo back to full integration. And he wants you to use one system of record, people, so it's not a chaotic mess. So, David, Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what for the people who don't have this as part of their purview or their job, explain what supply chain encompasses. It's kind of
well, supply chain basically is buying things, transforming them into something, or not transforming into something, and then supplying to another person, right? So it's very simple. You buy, you make, you deliver, right? So, but one of the things that I do, and I've been doing for the last 15 years, is actually helping companies who already have supply chains use a computer system called SAP to actually improve their supply chains. So, that's basically what I've been doing for the last 15 years.
So what is the one of the first thing that you see that needs to be improved in most people's supply chains?
Oh my, that's a brilliant question, because a lot of people would think it's a physical thing, but really and truthfully, when we go into a company, we look at their system. We look at the actual ERP system that's driving everything from a supply chain perspective. And people tend to think that it's in there that is the problem. But the reality of the fact is that it's a leadership problem in terms of being able to lead effectively using one system of record. Because a lot of people really do not know how to do that. Yeah, because they just depend on lots of different silos to get the job done, when really and truthfully, you purchased an ERP system to enable you to go from one end to the other in your supply chain and actually be able to see all the way across it. But that's never the case. And the reason for that is because leadership doesn't understand the necessity around that.
Okay. So ERP is enterprise resource planning.
That's
So for
correct.
the uninitiated, explain what that is. Is it it's a process? Is it a software? Give us a
It's a
primer.
software that basically brings all of your business processes together. All from the moment that somebody picks up the phone and dials your company to order something, all the way through the whole process of people having to buy things to make for that order. It brings it all together. So it's sales, it's warehousing, it's production, it's quality, finance. Depending on how complex your supply chain is, will depend on how many modules you'll use in an ERP system.
So which one of those tends to be the most resistant to getting on board?
Oh, great question. It's
Don't
funny.
name names. Yeah,
I'm
just
not going to name names, but I'm going to name them all. That's the thing. It's all of them, really. One of the big things fundamentally from a manufacturing, from a supply chain perspective, is everybody lives in their own world, right? And the whole idea behind an ERP system is that it's designed to break down all those silos and reintegrate. An enterprise resource planning system is there to reintegrate the whole of your supply chain. But, you know, I always say this, that we're still living in the 70s as far as manufacturing is concerned, because we all have our own we've always been doing it this way type of attitude. And so, of course, what that does is it generates and maintains that siloed environment. So, quite simply, all of them. We've gone into businesses and we've said, we need everybody in the room. We need salespeople. Well, why do we need to be there? We need, manufacturing. Well, no, we're manufacturing. We're okay. We make. We don't have to worry about things, And so everybody has their own reasons not to join the party. And one of the hardest things in the world is to get leadership to understand that everybody needs to join in to be able to be successful in a transformation. Because, if you look at the statistics out there in the world today, companies like Gartner, all those big research institutions, they say that at least on average, 70 to 75% of all digital transformations fail. And one of the biggest reasons is leadership.
yeah.
So the best managers, how do they go about doing that?
The best managers, well, a manager is somebody who enables or who basically gets things done. What we're talking about is a leadership thing here in terms of being able to say, from now on, we are going to change the way that we do business. From now on, we are going to approach things differently. We are going to change the paradigm to be successful. So the true, I guess, transformational leaders are the ones that stand up and actually say, hey, things are going to change. And I, as a leader of this business or their business, I'm going to support you in every way I possibly can to enable that change.
You said that you've actually worked with businesses where they're literally scribbling supply chain assets and statistics and stuff on pieces of paper and Excel spreadsheets, and it's just a mess. It seems to me leadership you would want your supply chain to be out of one system, because then you would truly granularly know what's going on with your business. And
That's
I
very
would
logical.
argue that you might not know what's really going on with your business if you just saw a P&L once a month, but you had a fractured supply chain.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right there in every aspect, right? We've gone into businesses where they have purchased a multi-million-dollar system and do not use it because
Wow.
they have allowed people to just continue doing what they've always been doing. Those 7 most expensive words. We've always done it like that. And if you haven't got the strength in leadership to say, we're not going to do that anymore. We are going to now literally get rid of all of our spreadsheets so that I, as the CEO or a senior vice president of supply chain or whatever the C-suite, we need to be able to use one system of record to improve things. And what we've proven over the last 15 years working with lots and lots of different companies, small and big, is that it can be done, and the benefits are huge in terms of efficiency. Because effectively you do see instant line of sight. And because they don't know what they don't know, but they don't make it happen.
Let's
Right.
talk about AI. Obviously, we had to talk about that since we're talking about technology. So presently and in the future, then, what do you see that the ways that generative AI is going to be used in supply chain operations?
Okay, so I'm going to take it from my perspective, which is the digital side of the world. I mean, AI, yeah, we perceive it as digital. Okay. The one thing that everything is driven from is master data. Okay. It doesn't matter, yeah, how effective you are as an individual. If you're trying to put something together, such as an ERP system that will drive every output of your business and give you good information to make good business decisions, you need a solid core. And that solid core is driven by master data. Think of it as oil in an engine. Okay. If you haven't got clean, good oil, then eventually your engine will just literally cease up, right?
Yeah, it's
So
garbage in, garbage out, pretty much.
that's it effectively. So when people think about AI, what they do is they think about the fact that it's going to be the panacea to solve all their problems. When really, truthfully, all it's going to do is cleverly, was that a very good? That
It
was a
is
very good.
now.
Yeah.
You used it in a sentence.
Yes, it's not going to be able to do what you think it's going to be able to do because it's working with garbage. Right? Quite simply, it will not give you everything that you need. So unless you get your core clean, unless you get all of the data that drives your business where it should be, then you're going to get something that's very clever, yeah, make clever mistakes, okay, and give you not so good information. Yeah, because it's driven by that, by that oil. And if your oil's dirty, then everything out of it is going to
Mhm.
become.
So people all the time is telling me that I have to work on my core. So, this is just add another one to the pile.
Yeah.
But no, let's drill down on that a little bit. I mean, you see AI and just supply chain operations being effective for like forecasting demand or reducing risk or negotiating costs, things like that.
Yeah, eventually, absolutely. Right.
How
Yeah,
far out do
because
you think that is?
say again.
How far out do you think that is?
Um, Not too far. I'd say maybe 5, 10 years. Right. In the manufacturing world, that's pretty, I guess wild in terms of a guess because, we're still living in the 70s and we think that we're advanced, right?
Yeah,
So
the AI seems to be going at a breakneck pace, but the manufacturing seems to be really slow, in
yes.
how it progresses. So that's what something's got to give. What gives?
Well, nothing's going to give at this moment in time. The AI actually will give because if we don't get our manufacturing data to the shape that it's supposed to be in, then nothing is going to go past that point, right? And and people then will revert back to the way that they've always done things, right? That strong tribal instinct, right? That security is going to basically override everything. The institutionalization of a business wins every time unless you have this strong leadership. I keep going back to that, right? That says we've got to stop this. We're going to change the way that we do things. And then maybe we can start to think about how we're going to introduce AI into our business to enable us to get better and better.
We were talking before you came into the Zoom room about COVID and supply chains that were broken then. And then we were like, we want to know from David what industries still have supply chain problems globally right now. I had a guess. Lee had a guess, but go ahead and tell us which are like the top 3 or 4.
So I'm going to say every industry,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because everybody suffers from the same pain, right? I've worked with over 40 businesses in the last 15 years, from heavy industry through to chemicals, through to bio, through to toiletries, through, lots and lots of different industries. And they all suffer from the same issue. And that is the fact that everybody wants to use spreadsheets. Everybody's data is not up to scratch. Yep. So it's a band-aided or a plastered, as we would say in England, supply chain that functions. Sellotape technology is holding it all together in that respect, right? So if I was to say to everybody, we can go into one business. I can pretty much guarantee what I'm going to find because I know from the last 40 businesses that it's always been this in this particular area, which is data, which is a lack of leadership, a lack of understanding of how their actual ERP system works. The understanding around the functionality just isn't there because they haven't been educated. What's happened is that they've been trained, and training means push this button, press the save, and then away you go, right? Rather than understanding, this is why you're doing it, and this is the net result of what you do when you do it, and this is how it affects the supply chain, either up or downstream. Rather, people say, right, jump through this hoop, push that button, and then carry on with your spreadsheet, because there's no fundamental attempt in the beginning to educate. No fundamental attempt in the beginning of an implementation or a transformation to ensure that the paradigm is actually changed. Yeah, because it's such a big task that it's very, very difficult. And again, that gets back to the leadership side of the world, which is they don't know how to actually make that fundamental change. Yep. With Reveal, we've developed a methodology over the last 15 years. In the book, The All-in-One Way to Fix Your Supply Chain, okay, it brings all of these things together. It talks about leadership, it talks about education, it talks about adoption, it talks about master data, and eventually governance, right? And how you have to do all of these things separately, but at the same time. And the majority, in fact, all businesses don't know how to do that. And that's what I'm hoping the book will give them, is the knowledge or just the insight, should I say, to be able to start to do that.
Well, I want to talk about the governance part of it, because there's a lot of upheaval, in the United States and in Europe and everything like that and there's some expectation, at least on this side of the pond, that there's going to be less regulation instead of more regulation. And over Europe, it's like so many things are happening, it's hard to keep a finger on it. So what do you see as the future trends as it pertains to governance?
Okay, so I just want to differentiate. When I talk about the governance in the book, what I'm talking about is the leadership of the supply chain in a business.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I mean by that is that we have this set of processes that people do, their jobs, planning, demand management, purchasing, those kind of things. And the governance that I'm talking about basically is how do we make sure that using the one system of record that everybody is doing their jobs, that their processes are effective, and that they are basically working for my business, right? So that we are not letting people run wild and run free, which generally is what happens, especially when you've got a siloed environment. So the governance in the book is around how do we ensure that everybody is working towards the same goal. And I talk about in the book that goal being a 5-year business plan. Because one of the bad things from a leadership perspective is that not very good at communicating a 5-year business plan to the people who are actually going to achieve that plan. Right, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to governance, right? So from the C-suite all the way down to the people who are doing their jobs using the system, everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction, not pushing and pulling against each other. And that piece around the governance is how do we get that organized so that everybody can see. It's because that's that's one of the things that everybody lacks, which is the visibility to be able to govern. And in the book, it shows you how to go around and make sure that you obtain that visibility.
So speaking of communication, then what advice would you give as the best way to communicate any unforeseen disruption in your supply chain as you're dealing with, and this is for anybody that's customer facing that basically has to bear the brunt of whatever that disruption is or whatever those bad decisions were in the supply chain?
So the best way basically is to be open and honest and to have everybody in the room having the conversation. Okay, so you talk about a disruption in the supply chain. We want to be ready to be able to see that disruption. We want to be able to be ready to be able to adapt, or I hate to use the word react, but in this instance, it is a reaction, right? Okay. But as a team, not individually. So say, for instance, we have a huge increase in sales and our forecast does not forecast this, right? It's double, maybe treble the amount that we're trying to sell. And we've basically trebled the amount that we are selling, should I say, sorry. So effectively, I want to be able to see the effect almost immediately through the supply chain when 3 times the amount of orders come through the door. Okay, and we can only do that as a team. We can only do that as a supply chain team, but we can only do it using one system of record. We can't have 4 or 5 different personal information systems breaking that line of sight. Okay, so that demand comes in, it's real. Yes, it's real, right? Okay, how do I react to that? Well, I've got to download it all and put it into my spreadsheet. Then I've got to go away and perform some magic. And then I've got to upload it here. And then somebody else has got to download it. That is just total inefficiency. If you can have all of your data set up where that demand comes in and then you can see the effect pretty much immediately, then you're winning straight away. And the hardest part is getting everybody to look into the same system. We basically have this approach in our methodology. We bring everybody together. We call them a process aligned team, which effectively means they all pretty much sit together, whether they're in a room together or whether they're like us now, zooming in or whatever. But we are talking live. We are using live data. And we are adjusting as we go together as a team, not in isolation. That's how, that's the best way, should I say, to approach any of those catastrophic changes to supply chain.
You're davidgcarroll.com. It's Carroll, everybody. And same thing on your LinkedIn. And Lee, I'll give you the last question. We got about a minute left.
So we do this thing here on the show whenever we interview somebody then who's a musician, and we basically ask enough people, enough varied question, whatever, that we can basically put together our own band. So your question is going to be, who's the best British musical artist of all time?
Oh, well, that has to be the Beatles, right? Simple as that. Yeah, they have influenced from pop to rock to almost. You could almost say heavy metal in some respects, right? With some of the music that they've written, they're just, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, just ahead of Led Zeppelin.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say Jimmy Page. That was what popped in my head.
Exactly. Literally a hair's breadth ahead of the Zeppelin.
How about something more current?
From a British perspective, from an English perspective, current, my gosh. I've been living in America now for the last 18 years and I don't know really, to be honest with you. Oasis would be about as current as I'd go in that respect, right? They truly have changed the rock world in some way, shape or form.
Well, also you're an authority on British music and also supply chain. So I'm going to remind everybody to go get your book. Here's the title again, everybody. The only all-in-one way to fix your supply chain. Fix it, people. It'll be a relief. You'll always know what's going on. That's the main message. David, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been very interesting, and we should have done this topic a lot sooner. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.